glad to have you here, and thank you so much for being part of this convergence.
Yeah, it's wonderful what you're doing. So what we are and who I am is I'm Carissa Kranz. I'm a vegan from birth, and I'm the founder and CEO of BeVeg International, which is a vegan certification firm. And what we have done was, is create a vegan standard that is globally defined and internationally recognized. I do have a small little PowerPoint presentation, which I can put on. And I do also have our Chief Compliance Officer who's going to join us and talk about the tech side of things. So our Chief Compliance Officer, just so you know, his name is Dave McGee, and he's the founder of Hayfields Consultancy. And Hayfields is probably the only UK vegan food safety consultancy in the world for vegan standards. And he's really stepping in terms of BeVeg and helping us define a very robust standard that meets GFSI standards, which is the good, food initiatives, the ISO standards, which is the International Standardization Organization, and all the things and technicalities that go into manufacturing facility audits to take vegan claims seriously. So this is important because a lot of us think that, oh, it's a vegan product, or we think it's vegan, it says it's vegan, so therefore it's vegan. And the reality is, as I've been running this business, I've been learning that there is no vegan standard that is federally regulated. Vegan definitions are like the Wild West. They are loosely held, and anyone can claim they're vegan. And the question is, by what standard and what does that mean? And the reality is, for the consumer, that much of these vegan claims are misleading at best and fraudulent at worst. And I say fraudulent because we have many products apply to us who fail because of an ingredient or a source ingredient that might have, let's say, a vitamin D that has sheep oil, or a sugar that's made out of natural charcoal, which is bone char, or some natural flavoring, which has 81 ingredients within that one ingredient of natural flavoring. And they think they're going to pass, and they hope they pass, and they want to pass because they want to have the vegan certification on their product, because they want to have the marketing and sales benefit of more money by claiming that they are vegan. And then they fail. And then we will say to them, you're failing because of this ingredient. And the reality is, they could switch that ingredient and continue with the process to pass, and then therefore still have access to our global trademark, which is on 6 continents right now. They could have access to that trademark if they passed, but it costs too much for them to change their ingredient, or they don't want to be bothered with changing that ingredient. And so what do? They say, I'm just not going to continue with vegan certification, or I might go get another certification that might be a little bit easier to pass. And I'm still going to say I'm vegan on my product packaging. And guess what? They can, because nobody's holding them accountable. And there's no legal accountability to that, because the word vegan is not legally defined. It's not legally standardized, and nobody cares or holds those claims credible or accountable. And while BeVeg has created a global vegan standard and a scheme which is accredited, and it's the only accredited vegan standard in the world by ISO 17065, and we are about to gain our global accreditation with ISO 17067. So those are two different things. ISO 17065 is for products. 17067 is a conformity assessment program, which means a one world standard that others can be, accountable to, and license use of the scheme and use the scheme so the consumer can know with transparency and clarity what it means to be vegan. What does that standard say? And is it unified? And is anyone auditing the actual standard owner? So to be accredited like we are, it means we're also being audited as a standard owner. So we audit products, and then we are also audited as a certification body. So to have the 17067 accreditation is basically creating a standard that all the certification bodies around the world that are already doing kosher, gluten-free, food safety, organic, they can now carry out the Be Veg Vegan certification scheme from beginning to end and follow the procedures, follow the definitions, follow the checklists. So, okay, why is that important, right? So I'm learning a lot through this process. So I was someone that was born and raised vegan. And it wasn't until like 2016 that I learned, having a glass of wine and a tofu burrito, that the glass of wine I was drinking might have fish bladder in it. And I was pretty horrified because I didn't think that wine was made of anything really but grapes and sulfites. And when I did my research as a lawyer, so I, you know, my awareness went up and my concern grew as I learned that there are up to 66 ingredients that could go into a glass of wine, according to the Tobacco and Trade Bureau. Okay, so I thought about it and I'm like, you know what, that actually makes sense, I guess, because why else would there be more than 1 million beverages? And when I say more than 1 million, I mean more than 1 million, because at BevEdge, we have an app that catalogs, it's free. We catalog all the alcoholic beverages in the world, and we have more than 1 million beverages listed in there. It does not mean we have information on all of them, but it means we have access to all of their names. So why would there be more than 1 million beverages in the world when it's really kind of all categorized as Cabernet, Pinot Noir, Merlot, Sauvignon Blanc? Okay, if it was just about grapes, we wouldn't have more than 1 million brands, right? It's not just about grapes. It's about what is being added to these grapes. What is being added to the process of making wine? What is being added to the process of making food? So my curiosity went a step further as I was practicing law, having my own law firm. I was a former prosecutor. I went to Berkeley Law School. I worked at Greenberg Traurig, which is a top global law firm. It was a top 5 global law firm. I did securities litigation. I'm someone that, you know, thought about things. I was on law review at Berkeley. Like, I want answers. So then I started getting into the food aspects of things. And I learned that a lot of food had flaws in the legal system and in the truth and transparency and labeling laws that basically protected trade secrets to the detriment of consumer transparency. What does that mean? Here's an example. The law says now that if you have less than 0.5 grams of anything per serving, you can round down to 0. So if you have 0.45 grams of sugar per serving, you can say that the product is sugar-free. If you have 0.46 grams of alcohol per serving, you can say it's alcohol-free. Even when you're talking about products like gluten-free or other standards, it all comes down to traceability, gap analysis, and where do you draw the line? And what's the gray area, and how do you stay consistent? So as I learned about the discrepancies in the law, I realized, you know what, there's like really no truth in labeling when it comes to vegan claims. There's no such thing as a vegan claim with integrity unless it's certified. And then it needs to be certified by a standard that is verified, and that standard is audited, and then that standard is defined, and that standard is up for public comment, and that standard can evolve with the evolution of veganism. Because the truth is veganism in general needs to evolve, right? We need to grow as a standard, because right now the standard has to accommodate where society is, right? So I've been posed with many questions in the past about, let's say, soil practices. Well, can you say that let's go back to wine. Can you say that wine is vegan if the grapes they were made on was in an agricultural farming situation where they used manure? And that probes it even further of what the gray area is. When you go to a vegan restaurant, are we looking into the soil practices of the tomatoes, of the lettuce that we order on our plates? There's major discrepancies here. So I think that the importance is building a one world vegan standard that is clearly defined, that can accommodate a business sense, to raise consumer consciousness, to raise awareness. Because if you are a consumer looking for a certified logo that you know has a standard, then the manufacturing facilities are going to give into that demand. And as you give into the demand and you help create the demand, then the demand of the standard can get stricter and travel. We can't be too strict to start off, because then it's not practical. But we do need to be strict enough in terms of what's going on in these manufacturing facilities. So right now, as I'm learning, because we have to audit these facilities, and if David joins this meeting, I hope you'll let him know, because let me know he's our chief compliance. I sent him the link. He's our chief compliance officer, and he's the technical expert here who has 20 years in auditing experience. But he's the one that can really explain in detail the importance of these audits to ensure no cross-contamination. So what does that mean? It means that most products that are labeled vegan are made in manufacturing facilities that are not dedicated vegan facilities at all. In fact, they are made in facilities that make all sorts of other products of animal origin. So what needs to be done to ensure that there's no cross-contamination in the production line between the vegan products being run and the other products being run? It would be great if one day there were dedicated vegan facilities all over the world, but that's another thing that's going to have to come with demand. So that's going to come with us saying we want to have a vegan, certified product. We want truth and transparency in our labeling laws, and we want to hold the manufacturing facilities accountable. Right now, I'm seeing that many of these manufacturing facilities take kosher claims seriously and take gluten-free claims seriously. But when it comes to vegan, they're like, yeah, whatever. We just want to have the label for marketing. We just want to be able to increase our sales. And we want to be able to be a facility that can tell our private label products, because most facilities are making products for private label. So when you think you're buying something out there, unless it's like a vegan owned brand of a vegan company of your friend that came up with the recipe, then you really don't know what's going in those products anyway. And then they have problems too. So if you have a vegan friend who comes up with a product, they still have to find a manufacturing facility to make the product in a production line, which is called a co-packing facility. So there still needs to be procedures in place. But what you don't know is that so many brands out there you think are vegan, and they are private label, which means the manufacturing facility has made their brand that they own, and then they redo that entire brand, that exact trade secret, that exact recipe, and they repackage it and repurpose it under another label. And then that label's also wanting to claim it's vegan. So there's so many trade secrets, and there's so much that goes into this process. And the more I get into it, the more I learn, and I get baffled by what's really happening, and realizing how much we really have to work together to change the world, to stand together and to stand united on, I want to have a single vegan standard. I want a one world standard. And this is critical. Like, we're actually certifying a natural flavorings company right now. It's a major one. And one ingredient of natural flavoring had more than 100 sub-ingredients in that one ingredient of natural flavoring. So, it's really baffling to learn all this as a lawyer. I was born a vegan, I practiced law, and then I got to a stage of my life where I was like, you know what? I'm practicing these laws that I really don't enjoy. Like being a prosecutor, I did a lot of criminal law, and then I did at Green Bertrand, I did securities litigation, which was completely draining. And then I had my own law firm, a lot of civil litigation, very adversarial in process. And I'm realizing, you know what? I can continue to work within the confines of the law that's already defined, or I can see the law as a living, breathing organism, which it is, and that human law is this intended version of these higher laws, and that lawyers by nature are regulators, and that I'm a vegan here, so I should just be practicing the laws I care about. I should start practicing and helping define the laws that I believe matter, which is how I got involved in the Jane Unchained news network and show, my show's Laws That Matter on the show. I spend the show addressing, I like to bring spiritual beings onto the show. I like to bring enlightened content to the network. I believe that human law is an intended version of these higher universal spiritual laws. And to me, these are the laws I want to practice. These are the laws that matter. These are the laws that I choose to live by. That's karmic law, the law of unintended consequences. And that's what veganism is, right? It just needs to be defined within the law. So just like the Civil Rights Act has expanded over the years from race to religion to marriage equality to disability to gender discrimination, it will expand to veganism as well. It's going to include vegans as a non-religious moral class. And once we are accepted by the law as a class, our rights as vegans will expand. And if our rights as vegans will expand, the animals will benefit. Because the reality is a lot of vegans are not egocentric, they are for the animals. And then they become these animal rights activists. But it's a lot easier to get rights for humans than it is for animals. So by defining, and I have a book coming out called Vegan Law, Know Your Rights, which is being published by vegan publishers, we are defining different areas of the law within veganism that need to be defined, that have yet to be defined, and that will be defined, because globally all these topics are being considered, right? So when you talk about veganism in a one world standard and being united, it's not just vegan label law, it's vegan parenting, like what happens if you get divorced, who determines the nutrition of the child, what happens in places of public accommodations, like schools, prisons, hospitals, restaurants, lodging. You know, we have the Americans with Disabilities Act here, right? Which means that in places of public accommodation, you have to accommodate those with disabilities reasonably. Well, wouldn't it be fair to say that in places of public accommodation that we should have reasonable accommodations for veganism, or in our vegan lifestyle, that we should have options and choices if we're in hospitals or prisons or public schools? That should be options when our tax dollars are being paid to help support this infrastructure. What about discrimination? I have to tell you, I used to get really upset going to Starbucks when I was younger, ordering my soy latte and getting charged an extra 84 cents because I wanted soy milk rather than regular milk, when regular milk was subsidized by the, meat and dairy industry. They have their bailouts. And there's a lot of underlying issues that I think that us as vegans don't understand, that we actually have rights. And these rights, that's why the book is being called Vegan Law, Know Your Rights, because these rights we all need to be aware of, because the way these rights are going to be defined and set out is if we have plaintiffs. And as much as I don't love litigation, sometimes in order to make law and create law, you need to have the perfect plaintiff to take the case to court, which will then set the precedent of whatever it is you're trying to achieve. And it might not happen on the state level or the district level, and it might not happen in the Court of Appeals, but the way these cases work is they travel up the court systems. And as they travel up the court systems, that's how law is made. And if you have law in one jurisdiction that conflicts with law in another jurisdiction, that's when the Supreme Court gets involved and makes the law of the land. So by being vegan, we're really, I don't want to say we're part of like this new movement, because I was born into this movement, but we are part of a movement that is really real and really landmark. And it's going to happen where we can make some landmark decisions that will actually bring the world together, so we do stand united on these issues, because we really need to stand united on these issues. And when it comes to me and the practice of law as a lawyer, I used to feel like I hated the practice of law. I mean, I'm not going to lie. It's just, it can be very draining. It can be very, you go to war every day. Your clients, the the court system is very adversarial in nature. But I don't think that universal laws and spiritual laws and the laws that matter and the laws that we're meant to practice are supposed to be that way. I think that's a human interpretation and a human twist on these universal laws. And we live in this law-based universe. And that's the other book that I wrote that I'm waiting to publish because I want to get the vegan law book out first because I'm under a book deal on that. But the other book that I wrote that I really believe in, that I feel like BVeg is my platform to get that other message out, is called The Laws That Matter. And it's about how we live in this law-based universe, and we must show up in life and subpoena yourself to show up in life and do discovery and soul discovery, self-discovery, enjoy the process of discovery. And it teaches you tools through courtroom practicum and legal procedure on how you can live your best life. So like if a thought doesn't serve you, file a motion to dismiss on the universe, dismiss that anxiety, or summon your desires, or subpoena your soulmate. It takes it to another level, but it's really all connected. So whether it's coming down to vegan label law, which is be veg in my business, or it's having other vegan laws out there that will address what you all need as vegans to live out your potential or your business or your passion or your purpose or your calling, these are all serious laws, and you cannot escape these karmic consequences in these laws. And going through this and practicing law this way has made me really love the practice of law, because I realized the law is actually on your side when you're practicing law with good intentions. Yeah. So I do have a PowerPoint, but I think that maybe I should just answer questions. I think I addressed everything.
Great. Actually, this is great. We can have a conversation, with
Did Dave by any chance come in to the call?
No, he hasn't.
Okay. I think I told him 6:30. That might be, but it's 6:38, so no worries. I can handle it. But if it's technical questions, like how an amino acid is reviewed, or a yeast peptone, or like this facility that has 101 ingredients and one natural flavoring, I need him for those answers. He's the technical expert on that.
No. We won't go there. We'll go because I'm really interested in what you're doing with the universal law, and how do we form the basis of a vegan world, where we begin with no secrets. So suppose you say it's an open source system. How would you? Yeah, assuming it's an open source system, how would you devise a legal system for that?
So I always say that access to court is a fundamental right? That's our human version. So access to universal laws is also a fundamental right. We all have access, and not one of us has any more access or better access or stronger access or more of a connection than any other. I think sometimes we feel like we need to go through a priest or another medium or person in order to get to the creative source, but I don't believe that that's true. I believe we all have access. We all are an open source. We all can download. The question is how much do we believe in ourselves, and how much do we allow ourselves to download? I think that in life, we tend to pinch ourselves off from the universal connection and the universal inspiration. And when we do that, we are boxing with God rather than allowing God. And I think that if we can open up our consciousness as individuals, we will open up our consciousness as a collective society, because we are all connected. And I think it all starts with us in the end. But being a spiritual lawyer or an officer of the Supreme Court, right? Play on words, is your birthright. It's not something you have to go to law school for. We all have the right to practice these laws. And it's so important to just open up and be in receiving mode. And if you feel a burst of inspiration, you feel a passion, you feel a purpose, that's your calling. And you don't want to be in contempt of your calling. You want to show up in life. So subpoena yourself. You've been called. You're here for yourself. You're your own best advocate. Do what you believe in, own your truth, and the rest will come. I think that the universe is always responding to you. It's always responding to each and every one of us. So it's important that we are paying attention to the message we are putting into the universe. What is it that we are saying? Because the universe responds like a mirror, right? That's why we hear the law of attraction, the law of mirroring, the law of the law of life, the law of love. I mean, all these laws can be laws at play. And if we are working with the laws and with the universe and not against the universe, then we will witness justice delivered in the, in the form of miracles, right? Evidence, legal evidence is signs and synchronicity of the universe. And you want universal evidentiary support in everything you do in life. And that will lead you to the next thing. I think that like with myself, sometimes like I'm really impatient with myself and I'm a perfectionist and I know exactly where I want to be, but I'm really impatient in getting there. Like, I know I'm supposed to be there and right now I'm here and I just don't want to go through all the steps to get there. That's my human flaw. But I think that as humans, we have flaws. That's why we're humans, right? That's our character. I think character is what dresses our soul. Like we have these perfect souls. We are all these perfect little beings from the same place, but we're complicated beings. We are complicated beings. And we need to sometimes this character that we are dressed with sometimes makes us more complicated and sometimes it makes us more beautiful, right? Sometimes we can take this character off and derobe it and there's this beautiful essence inside that you've been hiding. And other times our character could be enhancing that essence inside. So veganism to me is a way for us to access these universal laws in a really pure form that is less clouded. Now, that doesn't mean that a vegan is more ethical necessarily than a non-vegan. I think that like one thing, Dr. Rao, that you always say that I really love that resonated with me is you might already be vegan. You already have a vegan heart. And I think that speaks to me because I grew up in a time where veganism was a taboo and I was made fun of and I was bullied. And so my friends weren't vegan. I was not a vegan activist. I was not part of a vegan movement. I was a closet vegan. I wanted to be left alone to just eat what I want. I didn't want people to ask me, how do I get my protein? Or, do I think a carrot screams? Like, I just was so exhausted from the conversations. Like, it was just too much. So one thing I learned is that I lived within the mainstream society, but I just chose to be me. And I kept who me was quiet. It's only more recently since I've had a vegan business and that veganism is more cool that I'm owning it and talking about it more. But it's so important for us to be able to speak to others in a language that speaks to them. And there are a lot of people out there that are vegan without making the connection that they actually might be vegan. I thought about it yesterday. I went to brunch with my dad and I brought my little dog with me and everyone in the restaurant thought she was so cute, but yet they were eating on their plates bacon and eggs and, you could just tell these are good people. These are nice people who would not go and kill an animal. They are kind, compassionate people that have complete cognitive dissonance. So to me, veganism is just part of the path to enlightenment. It's part of the path to spirituality. It is a necessary path to reach enlightenment. If you're vegan, it doesn't mean that you're going to be an enlightened person. And if you're not vegan, it doesn't mean that you're not going to gain enlightenment. But I think in order to achieve ultimate enlightenment and true compassion for all beings on this planet, and not even our planet, we could be in a multiverse, who knows? We need to expand our compassion beyond ourselves. We need to be aware of all beings around us, all insects, all life, all trees, the Amazon, everything. And the spirituality is going to come to you. You're just going to download it. And it's going to, if you're not vegan, doesn't mean that you can't download it, because you can download, but you're not going to have the full connection of alignment until you align with integrity. And what's integrity? Integrity is when your thoughts and your heart and your actions align. That's integrity. So if you have a thought and your heart feels a certain way, is that aligned? And are you acting in alignment with those thoughts? So a lot of people have integrity of mind and heart, but they're not acting in alignment with it. Or they have integrity of heart for veganism, but then mentally, they've cut off what it is that's on their plate or what they're doing. So they're not aligned mentally with their heart. Once you start aligning, you can't not know anymore. Like once you know, you cannot not know. And once you know and you take steps in action towards that knowingness, your consciousness is going to expand. So I guess that was a long tangent, but.
That's great. Ray, you had a question? You have your hand up?
Yeah. the whole may contain dilemma, is that, I'm not sure if that's something that you got into, but I remember a very long discourse on, I think it was on Facebook, about the Justin's peanut butter cups, which were available in Starbucks, and was one of the few things that was apparently vegan, but it said contains milk in it. But after all the ingredients were listed, period, contains milk. And then if you look at all the ingredients, there wasn't anything that could have contained milk. And eventually somebody mailed them and asked, is it vegan? And they claimed it was.
So I'd have to see the label. Did it say it contains milk, or did it say it was a facility that makes milk, or did it say that it may contain milk because the facility might have cross-contamination and the facility is not really being audited? So, I mean, so what I think, claims on products and packaging is a legal claim. That's a legal claim to whatever you're saying, and there's always liability with that. So these manufacturers like Justin's, was it the Reese's peanut butter cup? Is that what you said it was?
It was Justin's peanut butter cup. But
yeah.
The structure of it was what we're used to seeing, a bunch of ingredients, period, and it says may contain or made in a factory that contains. But this says contains. And so that we said that's definitive. It says it does contain milk, and then when we asked them, they said it doesn't. So they screwed up on that.
They don't know. The thing is, they probably don't know. And what they did is, if it's coming from a facility that makes milk and dairy products, they're probably afraid to say this is fully vegan because there could be cross-contamination on the production line. And if someone wants to test it or send the product to a lab where they can do DNA testing, which sometimes these DNA tests will trace products of animal protein and animal origin, and other times they will not. Depends on how far back the trace ingredients go. But what you want, it's possible that the main ingredients used in making the peanut butter cup is vegan, but if it's used in a facility that's making non-vegan things as well, there's a high likelihood of cross-contamination, especially if there's no rules in place to say this is a certified vegan facility, which might mean that the vegan production runs are run at the beginning of the day before any of the other production runs, and that's after the facilities were triple washed. It's after, there's food safety guidelines in place to prevent cross-contamination, and a part of the food safety guidelines would be, okay, let's treat veganism the same way. Let's have a risk analysis and a gap analysis and a SWOT analysis and all these different analysis to ensure that we can have integrity, there's that word again, integrity, in our vegan claims. These big companies are deep pockets and they don't want to be sued. So they could easily get sued if they're saying they're vegan. And you know what? It wouldn't be such a bad thing, because like I said, that's how we make law and that's how we make claims accountable. It wouldn't be such a bad thing to find a company saying they're vegan on something and finding out it's not, and then holding them accountable to it, and then letting a court of law decide whether or not it was really vegan. I mean, look at the Impossible Burger, right? The Impossible Whopper, where they were advertising 0% beef, but it was being cooked on the same grill as beef. Gray area. For us vegans, it's not a gray area. That we don't want that's not vegan. You're cooking a burger on a veggie burger on the same grill as all the meat, or going to Subway and making a sandwich, and you watch them make all the sandwiches and they touch all the meat and the cheese with their gloves, and they're on an assembly line of bread, and then they pick up your bread after the meat and cheese, and then they stick their hands in the lettuce. And I mean, if you don't care, then that's what manufacturing facilities are doing. If you care,
anything that may contain will not qualify as certified, right?
Yeah, I would say if it's you would want to have a certified logo, because they might still say, like, I'm not going to be the general counsel of these companies as well. Like if I were general counsel of the companies, I might look into my liability as a company and being sued for claims. What I would do is I would say we're certified vegan, but if it's out of a facility that is not a dedicated vegan facility, I would still probably say may contain, to cover myself if I were general counsel of the company, worried about liability. But what you want is a certified vegan claim, because then you know that the manufacturing facility was held to a standard, and that they had auditors there, and that they had auditors there that are trained by ISO 17065 standards according to a vegan scheme. And that means that certain production practices are in place to ensure that industry best practices are held to have no cross-contamination, and if there's cross-contamination found, then there are measures to put in place to fix it. There's remediation, there's additional audits, there's product recalls, so if you see a certification mark, you know that production line at least went through as certified vegan. It's not like an ongoing production line where they can just keep producing and they get certified vegan once and they're done for life. They're audited. They're kept accountable. We live in a society where we need to be kept accountable. We need to keep ourselves accountable. Right? That's why we go to the gym. That's why we work out. That's why we try to eat healthy. That's why we want to meditate. We want to keep ourselves accountable. Yeah.
I have a question about fruits and vegetables. Do you have a code or an idea of what kind of codes would need to happen with those? You had talked about where they're grown, but we're more likely to have fewer codes in the fruits and vegetables, right, than just
that would go down more, and this is where I wish Dave was here. That would go more down to the packaging. And sometimes I do know that sometimes, like lemons, for example, in restaurants might be coated in insect juice. So there are definitely things to look into, but it is less than other products that have lots of ingredients going into it and a whole production line of process. Like fruits and vegetables, usually they're not going to manufacturing facilities necessarily.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So anyone else? Anything else?
Yeah, in regards, hi, my name is Tammy. Thank you for your work. Thank you so much for your work. So in regards to when you're talking about fruit and vegetables, veganic versus organic, are we going to start seeing a lot more veganic food? And
I would love that. I would love that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I would love that. But I think that where the world is at, I almost feel like that needs to, and we've discussed this internally, I think that there almost needs to be another trademark that is just for soil and farming practices. So people can see on the label what's really happening if they travel the source down to the soil and farming. It is really hard now with farming, and that's where I think there will be a shift, and we need to make a shift, but the shift is going to come when we can demand it in mass. It's like you have to get the market to change the market. You have to be the popular choice, and veganism is now the popular choice. I mean, plant-based is the popular choice. And even the statistics show that 80% of people, whether they're vegan or not, if they walk into a vegan restaurant or they are looking at two products on a shelf, all things being equal, will choose the vegan product over the non-vegan product, assuming all other things are equal if the vegan product is labeled plant-based or vegan. So it is definitely the popular choice. The question is it the economical choice? And I think that that's where companies are struggling. I think that that's where I'm seeing them want to say we're sustainable, and where they're coming up with other words, not, what we want necessarily. Wordsmithing. It will happen. I don't know how soon it will happen, but I think it will happen.
I studied at the Tree of Life. That was a completely veganic center. And really, speaking of veganic, and Dr. Gabriel Cousin encouraged us to use the word veganic more than organic if we are using vegan practices, and start to get that word
out. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I like it. I think it's that's where we need to go. I mean, do you have any suggestions on how we can get there sooner? I mean, I know that it's hard. These companies that produce in mass, their farming practices definitely are exploiting animals.
I was saying that in the last turnaround, there's some farms that are being turned around quite quickly into veganic farming with EM, which is effective microorganisms. And they're having amazing success in California and some of the prime farmland that's been conventional farm for a long time. And they're able to start to see it become living soil within a year and a half again.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yay.
I like, it looks like you're in a log cabin too, very back to nature.
I know, got a fire going. I'm out in the country in Canada and I don't live in an igloo.
Oh, wow. I love it. The rolled log cabin.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I'm blessed. I'm blessed. And I have a lot of veganic gardens going on here right now because we have a very short growing season. And I used EM for that. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Thank
I
you.
see. Am I supposed to pay attention to these comments? I see Paige, I think, am I here? What was that company or farm you were talking about, Tammy? That's from Paige.
It was called the Tree of Life Rejuvenation Center with Dr. Gabriel Cousins, but it has closed at this point. Oh. But I can get anybody in touch with some of the people that are practicing veganic farming. There's quite a few of the students that were his master students who have cafes, mostly in the States actually, and other places where they're practicing veganic farming. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Another question.
Thank you. So I've noticed that lately there are ingredients, and then as Ray said, there's a list of may contain, and it's been very easy then just to look, oh, it may contain milk, no, it may contain eggs, no, but I don't know that that's enough to look at. There still may be other things that are.
Oh, there's so many other things. It's not even considering the source ingredients or the supplier ingredients. I mean, that's the thing. So when you see those may contain statements and disclaimers, that is strictly the manufacturing facility's process of it being in a shared facility with other products that are completely not vegan going through the production line. But that does not mean anything about the actual ingredients being used to make the product that you're buying. So the product that you're buying also has, you know, when you look at the ingredients, you see just, you know, natural flavor, natural coloring, sugar, salt. You're not seeing any suppliers. You're not seeing any spec sheets. You're not seeing the 0.5 grams that's not disclosed per serving because that's considered insignificant by law. So, you know, it's a process. It's demanding transparency from these products and these suppliers that the law does not demand as is. The law does not demand it. Now, we demand it. We ask for it. We say that there's a very different perspective when you say ask a company to be transparent versus forthcoming. We want them to be forthcoming with us. We do not just want them to be transparent. We don't want to read a label and say, okay, you have sugar. What is that? Who's that supplier? Who's that natural flavoring? What is that? You know, we want them to say, okay, this is everything that you see on the label. These are the suppliers. And by the way, this is our manufacturing process. This is our trade secret. This is our clarifying agent. This is our processing agent. We add this micro, quote, insignificant amount to this product. And you can open our doors. You can walk in. You can come anytime. You can see we're following proper protocol, washroom procedures. We're being safe in everything we do. And this is not just for food. This is for cosmetics. This is for everything. Everything the consumer wants to buy, you would be shocked at, like the pig's glue that's in your sneakers, for example. It's just everywhere. I actually had a really great conversation today with A Billion Vegans, the online marketplace of, you know, the Amazon marketplace. And we're trying to figure out a way to work together because he's got like 1,000 products on there with major brands. He's trying to do the best he can to vet them, to ensure they're vegan, to carry them. But he's aware that he is saying he has a vegan marketplace. And if he truly wants to scale as a vegan marketplace, you can't say you have a kosher store and not be certified kosher. You have to be accountable. So he's realizing as he's going through things, he's seeing the gaps, he's seeing the difficulty and the expertise required in order to make these vegan claims with credibility that, you know, he wants to explore a way. I mean, none of this is going to happen overnight, right? I mean, who knows? We live in a quantum universe. Who knows what can happen? But you have to get people to. It's an education process, and people need to be educated in the fact that these things might be going on in the products, and a lot of this is going to be consumer demand driven. But if you're going to have a vegan marketplace, which is amazing to have vegan cosmetics and vegan shoes and vegan fashion and vegan food all in one place, like an Amazon of vegan.
How are you?
Hi.
Yay. I wasn't sure. I thought that was the correct Zoom link. There's Carissa. There's Sarah.
Yes.
Paige. Yay. Okay, now who's going to cross